This happened to me many years ago, back when I was just a boy. Back then, I was still living in my homeland of Russia, in a place called Yakutia, if you've ever heard of it. Yakutia has lots of places that are very remote, lots of scattered little villages that aren't really up to modern standards, even nowadays. I grew up in one of these little villages. I would have to walk 2 villages over just to go to school. We would be surrounded by forests on all sides, and the only thing to do as a boy was either toil away and help my father, or explore the surrounding forests and areas and villages. We had this one story that floated around the villages a lot. It was kind of an urban legend, I guess you would call it. We had a lot of those. Most of our urban legends were about mysticism and witches and forest spirits, but this one was a little bit different to the rest. There is the small cave system that's out deep in the forest. The old tale is something about some guy wandering in there one night, and when he came back, he wasn't himself. I struggle to remember it properly, but I think he was supposed to be a zombie or something, or possessed. I'm not really sure. I never really took it that seriously. Anyway, so around this time, me and a couple of friends have really gotten into exploring. I'm talking abandoned structures, villages where people had just up and left and abandoned their homes. There was even this abandoned factory type thing that was said to have been abandoned at the start of World War II and was never used again. Anyway, so we were wandering the forest, looking for something to do, and we stumbled across the mouth of a cave. It was pretty well hidden by foliage and trees and lots of dirt. The opening was pretty small by all means and would be a squeeze even for us kids. At the time, I was not even thinking about the urban legend, but I did have a really bad feeling. My friends, who I will call A and B, were desperate to go inside, but I kept telling them no. They laughed at me and called me a pussy, and they ended up going inside without me. I stood outside and I was sobbing a little because I felt like a loser. And eventually, after 5-10 minutes, maybe even more of just standing there and crying, I eventually gave in and just ran in after them. I had to really squeeze myself through this narrow passage to get inside. The passage was halfway up the wall, and it was like I was sandwiched in between both sides. I could feel my stomach hitting the rock whenever I attempted to breathe, and it made me feel so claustrophobic. In those days, our village was much too poor to have anything like flashlights. All I had was a little box of matches in order to light my way, and they did not give off a ton of light. I could only really see maybe 5 feet in front of me with this thing, and once I managed to sliver through the narrow passage, I had to cling to the wall to make my way around. I called out for my friends a couple of times, but all I heard was my voice echoing back around. And once it finished bouncing around each wall, I heard some kind of a noise back. It was just this garbled mess of a noise, starting really low and getting much higher. It scared the shit out of me. I just kept using my hands to help guide me along, but at one point, my hands ended up touching something wet. I felt something thick and slimy, and it squelched when I pulled my hand away. When I put the match closer to the wall to see, I freaked out and dropped the match to the floor. I just started walking really quickly and tried to wipe it onto my pant legs. I'm not sure what it was. I caught a glimpse of something moving along the walls. It looked like a handful of maggots, but they were all a kind of red color, and I could see bits of black too. I'm not sure for how long I walked, but eventually, I came out to a much larger section of the cave system. The ground was actually wet down here. There seemed to be a very tiny stream of water, maybe only a couple of inches wide, occasionally hitting the ground and my boots. This larger part of the cave, I could actually make out a lot more here. There was not a lot of natural light, but there were just enough in streams to be able to make out bits and pieces. What I saw made me hit the ground in panic because when I looked, there was this thing. It was on all four legs, and it was close by to me and seemed to be chewing something on the ground, some kind of bones or something else that was white. This creature, it was green, but with these black splotches randomly across its body. These black splotches, they looked to be raised and veiny. It didn't look like any kind of dog or wolf or any other four-legged animal I had ever seen in the area before. When I saw it, I fell onto my butt and let out an instinctive scream, and I had to grab my own mouth to stop myself. But when I fell, my shoes flew off. These were old boots and very holey and much too big for me. They were my father's old ones because we could not afford anything new, so I just had these. So my feet were not in them securely, so when I slipped and fell, one went off and up into the air, and it hit the ground just behind this creature. When I gasped, it looked straight in my direction and started making this growling noise. Its eyes were all glazed over and were almost pure white. It looked like this thing had cataracts. The growling noise was horrible. It sounded like it had a lot of liquid inside its throat that it was gargling. But the second my boot hit the floor, this thing turned around to where it landed, and faster than I could even see, this thing just leaped and landed on my boot. I had never seen an animal leap so far or so quickly before. I could only see from behind, but it looked like it opened its mouth really wide, like it unhinged its jaw like a snake. And all of a sudden, I saw this big glob of something thick and black had shot out of the creature's mouth and hit my boot that was on the floor far away. I think I saw it bubble for a second or two, and my boot looked to be pressed right down into the ground. And then this creature, it lifted its limbs. These limbs didn't have any kind of feet or paws or claws. They were just these sharp points essentially, and this creature reared up onto its hind legs like a horse. And then really quickly, it used its entire body weight to quickly shove its front limbs into my boot, and it impaled my boots. After that, I saw it sniff the boot and make some other sounds, and eventually, it left it behind and walked off somewhere. I did not see where it had gone, but I was shaking so badly. I felt like I should run away, but I wanted to get my boot, otherwise my father would be so angry with me. He would beat me if I lost it. It's hard to remember more of what I saw, since it has been so many years. The only other thing I remember about the creature is the head was really big for the body, really long at the end. Its nose was almost like a big circular mound on its head, and didn't have a snout like a wolf or a dog. The face was sharp at the front, and it curled backwards and was sharp at the end too. That's all I can remember in my blur of a memory. At this point, I was shaking so hard I could not even stand. I had to crawl on my hands and knees just to make any progress, and even then I remember it took me a long time. I remember that I got to my boot, and it took me all of my strength, and I still could not pull it free. It felt like it had been tied really tight by some rope into multiple knots. I had to pull it back and forth and wiggle it until I could pull it underneath whatever this black substance or goop was. I remember accidentally brushing the black stuff with my wrist as I tried to get my boot free, and it made me jump back. It wasn't hot, and it didn't physically burn me, but it felt like my wrist was burned. It felt like a cold burn, if that makes sense. It felt like when something is so cold that it burns. I was so concentrated on getting my boot and puzzled by everything that I had seen that I got turned around. I turned backwards and was shuffling forwards on my hands and my feet, thinking I was heading back to the entrance, but I actually ended up going further, deeper into the cave. My hands were on fire because these pointy stones in the ground just kept jabbing into my hands and cutting up my knees. It made it impossible to crawl very fast. And eventually I came to this big rock wall, and there was only a tiny little space to crawl through that was much too small for my body. It was only then that I realized I was an idiot and crawling the wrong way. But I heard noises, coming from up above me. And when I looked up, I saw two bodies that were stuck to the wall that were quite high up. It was my friends, A and B. I didn't think I would ever see them again, but I almost wish I hadn't. Both of them were suspended in the air against the wall. They were being held up by that same black substance I had seen earlier on my boot. A was dead. I could not make out a whole lot, but his face was just almost gone. His nose had been ripped or teared off of his face, and all I could see was a black void and the bits of bone where the nose should be. The skin on his head and near his eyes was all just missing, and all I could see was white with bits of red. I wanted to throw up and run away, but I was too scared to do either. But B was still alive. He was also suspended in much the same way as A, but the noise that I heard coming from up above me, it was him. He was wiggling side to side and trying to break free, and I think he was sobbing. I could see his leg. He was only wearing shorts that day when we played, and he had a big hole in his thigh. It was still bleeding and dripping down his leg and onto the floor periodically. I wanted to call out to him, but at the same time, I did not want that creature to hear me. And deep down, some part of me did not want B to notice me at all. I thought that if he did, then the creature might know if he said something. So I started trying to crawl backwards away, but he saw me. He saw me, and he just started shouting really loudly. He started begging me for help. He told me to stand up and help pull him down. He told me to move quickly before the creatures came, but all I could do was start crying. I was already hearing that same screaming noise from when I first entered the cave. I was hearing a fast skittering and scraping against stone, and it was getting closer and closer. Even if I did try and help, I never would have been able to get him down in time. Even if I got him down, he never would have made it home with such an injury. Maybe these are things that I just tell myself in my head to try and make myself feel less guilty. Maybe I am just a monster. After maybe 20 or 30 seconds, I saw the head of that creature suddenly being shoved through that tiny crawl space in the wall. B saw it too, and he started crying even louder, begging me for help, telling me, please don't let that thing go near me. But the thing pushed its head across the floor as it pulled the rest of its limbs through the gap. And then once it was out, its head immediately shot up to where B was screaming. Again, it moved so quickly that I couldn't even really understand, but it ran and did another big leap, and all of a sudden it was hanging from the rock wall by its pointy limbs. And it used them. It used them to climb the wall all the way up to where B was. At first it was hanging by the front too, and looked awkwardly clinging on. But after a second or two of gaining its balance, it was scuttling along the wall sideways like it was nothing. And when it finally moved close enough to B, it just made a leap to its side. And then I saw it use its limbs on him. It used its limbs to make a hole somewhere in his head or his eyes or something. I remember hearing him scream really loudly and it being cut short. I had to stifle my crying because I was so scared it was going to hear me too. I just didn't move. I don't know how long I didn't move for, but it felt like hours of me just crouching down there, on my hands and my knees. I had my eyes closed the entire time until that thing finally went away, but I heard sounds. I heard so many horrible sounds that I don't want to think about or repeat. Once I finally heard that thing scuttle away and squeeze through that hole again, I went back the way I came. Even that took me a long time. The second I squeezed through the sandwich section, I ran all the way back to my village without stopping. There were lots of people outside, still working well into the end of daylight, and many people looked at me with concern. I tried to tell all of them. I tried to tell my parents too. I told them my friends A and B had forced themselves into a cave in the forest. I told them they had gotten lost and that I saw them attacked by an animal. But people did not believe me. Everyone immediately remembered the old urban legend and thought I had gotten scared and made up a silly story. It was only when A and B's parents were in the village square crying about their boys not coming home that they began to believe me. But people refused to go looking in that cave. They told the parents that it was a lost cause and that more people would end up lost or dead. The parents of those boys left the village not long after, and I never saw them again. One of the fathers, I think A's, asked me where the cave was before he left, but I'm not sure if he ever went inside looking or just stayed away. Sorry, I know that my English is poor and my story is fantastical, but such is the life in Yakusha. Anyone there can tell you a 100% true story that they saw with their own eyes that you will never believe. It's a magical place, but that magic can sometimes be demonic and evil. I can't claim to know exactly what I saw, and I cannot force you to believe me, but it's something that really keeps me up at night. I still miss my friends. I wish I could have done more just to save them. This is a story that happened on one hot summer day. To cool off, my two friends working at the same beauty salon and I decided to have a drinking party. At the last part of our party, one of the friends mentioned, "One of my customers today told me about the sighting of phantom orbs in Mountain X. I haven't been there yet, even though I'm a local near where the mountain is. Wanna try and go there right now?" Since we three love to discover new things, and we're always full of curiosity, especially when it came to supernatural subjects that we can turn into gossip topics later on, my other friend and I very quickly approved. Alas, we departed to our horror tour location deep in the mountain. That haunted location was rather famous throughout Japan, that even I heard about its legend in my locality, where, at a specific time of the traditional Day of the Dead, people would see the orbs of the soul that died during wartime floating around the war memorial within the mountain. A place where I would normally be reluctant to visit just for fun, if it wasn't for my intoxication and lightheartedness that time. Upon arriving at the mountain, we went up the staircase, which led straight to the war memorial, with our breath shortening from its steepness. As one of my friends was walking ahead, they looked back and turned towards me and jokingly said, "You're too damn slow." I picked up my pace by rushing up the steps to get closer where they were at. Subsequently, I tripped and fell into a ditch on the sides of the staircase. While I was struggling to get back up, ignoring the sharp pain coming from my back, I unintentionally glanced at the ground in front of me that was covered with moss. There it was. It was a large group of crickets clumped together to one another. Slowly, the crickets began to swarm my incapacitated body as my consciousness gradually faded from listening to their chirping. Disgusted by the sight, goosebumps formed all over my body as I kept on struggling to move, watching my two friends advancing further upwards, not realizing my current situation. At that instant, I heard my phone ring with an incoming call from my friend, but as soon as I was about to answer the call by pressing the button, a blue fireball mysteriously manifested in front of my eyes. It can't be. No matter how much I wanted to shout for help or try to escape from it, my body was completely paralyzed and my mouth shut tight out of fear. Swarms of crickets continued to enclose me, disregarding the blue orb of fire dangling near my face. I should not have come here for entertainment. What have I done? Feelings of remorse and regret saturated my head. Then suddenly, as if someone were replying to my piety, a voice other than mine echoed inside me. "Save me, save me, save me." I finally swooned at last. When I regained my consciousness, I found myself on the bed in my room. It was past noon of the next day since last night when I fell unconscious. My friends explained to me about that night at the mountain, as how they found me inside the exact same ditch that I remember falling into, and immediately they carried me back home. Later on, I told them what I saw, but contrary to my own memory, they could not recall any blue fire orb, swarms of crickets, nor a ground covered with moss inside the ditch. Moreover, I was apparently conscious when they found me, as I repeatedly uttered the phrase, "Save me." I still hope, to this day, that that night was just an alcohol-induced hallucination. Here's a story that happened to me around 4 years ago when I was 16 years old. My mother was awake for weeks at a time. I was normally home alone unless my buddy came over. My buddy is over at my house. We're playing Minecraft. My room was a converted family room. It has a fan and a fireplace, / chimney, and stuff like that. My dog, who is normally complacent, comes bounding into my room, barking up a storm. I'm freaking out. I'm like, "Why are you barking? Stop." The ceiling fan was on, and it just stopped spinning. I don't know why. I look at my buddy, and my buddy looks at me. The dog stops barking for a second, and then the dog just starts staring at the ceiling fan and does not look away for a long while. I'm like, "What the hell are you looking at?" The chimney cover starts rattling around. It's loud as shit in the chimney. The fan starts turning slowly. One blade is bent down, like something is sitting on it or hanging on it. My dog is still sitting still, just staring at it, not making a single damn sound. The fan is still rotating slowly. This goes on for maybe 10 minutes. We go back to playing Minecraft. My dog goes batshit again. The fan speeds up to full again, rattling around as crazy as piss. It looks like it's going to fall from the ceiling, and then it just stops spinning. The dog goes quiet. The bent blade slowly straightens back out. Then the fan turns back on. The dog starts whining and pacing. A dead squirrel falls down the chimney and smacks into the fireplace cover. I just nope the hell out of there. I just run out of my room. I open up the cheap wooden folding doors, close them, and then wrap a string around the knobs. It's mid-January in Indiana. It's cold as hell. But despite the cold, I sit outside on the porch with my buddy anyway. Lots of really weird stuff happened in that house, if anyone wants to read another. So, my mom rented the house from my grandpa, so it's really, really old. As I said, I was home alone most days. So, rewind to around 3 to 4 years ago. I get home from school. The house is void of my mother. Nothing new, really. I grab a bag of chips and sit down to watch TV. I'm half-assing my homework as I do. Directly to my left is a weird staircase that winds left, then back right. One part of the wall of the staircase comes off to allow entrance into the attic thing. It's mostly used by cable guys, etc. That part of the wall is taped and stapled into place. It's heavy as hell and really hard to remove. Anyway, I'm still watching TV / doing work. The damn wall piece comes flying down the stairs. I turn on the lights over the stairs. I pick up the wall piece and look it back upstairs. I stick it back in space and watch it to make sure it stays. It looks good enough for me. So I go back to the couch, but guess what? The wall piece tumbles down again. I think screw this. I take it upstairs and lean it against the wall. I am not putting it back in again, just for it to fall down. So I start to go back down, and I hear scratching coming from the hole. I look inside, expecting a raccoon or something. I have found animals trapped in there before, but it's empty. Okay. I hear scratching again, way in the back. The light from the fan thing in the roof does not reach that far. I grab a flashlight from underneath the kitchen sink. I shine it in there, but I can't see anything still, so I just put the wall piece back. When I have barely let go of the wall piece, it instantly falls back out. So I put it back and keep my hands on it. I feel something pushing back against the wall as I'm trying to hold it in place, and it's strong too. I'm having to use all of my weight to stop it. So I just take the wall piece back off. I grab my backpack, get a bike from the garage, and bike the 5 miles all the way to my uncle's place. Weird stuff like this happened all the time. Never when my mother was home though. Convenient, huh? So, I also have a history of sleep paralysis. When I was young, around 8 to 9 years old, I have these nightmares about some weird creature. It's this skinny thing that's around 3 feet tall. It has long claw-like fingers, a fat head, and jet black eyes. It would sit in the corner of my room and stare at me. I would wake up, or so I thought, and the damn thing would still be there. It would look like it was trying to talk to me. Its mouth would be moving, but it had no teeth or gums. It was just a black hole. Then the mouth of the thing starts moving quicker. I cannot move or speak, so being really young and not really understanding, I start crying, wondering why I can't move. The thing just suddenly shouts, "Stop crying." The thing is now standing up and looks to be speaking faster and louder, and it sounds like a warning. I can start blinking again. I can move my fingers again. I shut my eyes tight, still crying softly. It's midsummer. The windows are open. I hear screen hit the concrete patio out back. The thing in the corner is gone. I wake up later, and my screen is outside on the ground with small tears in it. I'm not sure if a cat tried to get in and gave up or something, and that transferred into my dreams or what, but it was creepy nonetheless. I have dreams about that creature to this day, and I am 20 years old now. For this last one, I was around 13 or 14 years old. I was skateboarding home from school. This pickup blows for a stop sign and hits me. It drags me through the four-way stop and halfway down the street. He realizes that he hit someone. He gets out of the truck, crying and apologizing. I can't feel shit. I'm just pissed off because my board is broken. I'm not even worried about my injuries. The guy from the dog training center on the corner comes out and calls an ambulance and gives me his phone to call my mom. The ambulance gets there. He tells me that by the damage to the guy's truck, I should not be alive, let alone standing. I don't know what he's talking about. I tell them that nothing hurts. I don't have a single mark on me. My mom takes me home, despite the pleas from the paramedics. I start shaking after realizing what happened to me. I suddenly realize, why am I okay? Why did nothing happen to me? My mom is crying. I go inside the house. It's almost dark outside. I walk to my room and toss the pieces that are left of my board on the floor. There is a bunk bed in my room. I see something whitish on the top bunk. I'm thinking, what the hell is that? But it's in the shape of a smiling face, and when I blink, there's nothing there anymore. After I moved out of that house, I got hit by a car going much slower while riding my bike, and it broke a couple of ribs. I still do not know what happened to this day. I swear to whatever you believe in that that story is 100% true. When I was a teenager, my little sister, who was 10 years old, entered our shared bedroom, sobbing and shaking, and said that she saw a woman outside in the garden. I asked her what she meant, and after some encouragement, she managed to tell me, and our two brothers, who had burst into the room after hearing her crying, that she had watched a woman walk from the back door into the garden, where she disappeared. Of course, we took this to mean some psycho is in the garden, hiding amongst the potatoes and corn, and she scared our sister. So my older brother and I went outside with kitchen knives and split up to find the intruder. We found nothing. Later, we learned that when my sister said disappeared, she literally meant faded from existence. She saw a ghost. At the time, my sister was dealing with some issues with speech. She literally could not get her words out. She would struggle to express herself, and she would stutter and stumble on her words, so she couldn't really describe shit very accurately. After some coaxing and reassurances that nobody was outside, she slowly managed to flesh out what had happened. She had been in the garden, playing with the kittens. When the sun started to set, she picked up the kittens and made her way indoors. Only, as she approached the back door, she saw a woman in a hospital gown moving, floating from the back door, past the empty washing line, and then vanish into the garden. I don't mean the woman vanished among the bushes. My sister said she literally faded out of existence. I thought about this from time to time, and my sister has retold the story at my request several times. She's much more eloquent as an adult, so she's able to tell me the story much more precisely now. But it has literally never changed from when she was 10 years old to her being an adult. The details have remained the exact same. Mostly, I like this story because it's proof of how much we love our sister, lol. My brother and I were ready to stab someone for spooking her. I grew up on a Native American reservation, so here's my story. I was visiting my family as I live in the city. I was outside, smoking cigarettes with my brother. We're just bullshitting and whatnot, until I see my brother go quiet. I look to where he is looking, and I see a shadow standing outside someone's house. The shadow is very black compared to the other shadows surrounding the neighborhood. The neighborhood is lit by tangerine-colored lights. I flick my cigarette onto the ground, but just keep staring. I cannot take my eyes off of it. We see it slowly turn away from the window and stride into the backyard. Its stride is very unusual. It sort of glides. I see a lot of the neighborhood dogs around it. They usually bark at these kinds of things, but this one they followed. I then see it go down on all four legs and grow a tail. It then hobbled out into the darkness. My brother and I go back inside to tell our mom. She tells us it's a skinwalker. Later on, we go outside to gather some wood for the fire stove. As we go out to the woods, we see the lights around my mom's house go out. A rotten smell hovers about. We gather what we can and head back inside. A few hours later, we hear something step on our porch. Our dog growls at the door, and that's when we hear a bang on one of the bedroom windows. After that, the noises and everything just ceased. A few weeks later, I got a call from our mom, and she tells us that one of the people in that house the black figure was looking at died of cancer.